okay, the ESPN Ric Flair 30 for 30 is, wow. For a long time, if you've been a fan of wrestling, you know Ric Flair. The person that you probably don't know is Ric Flair. That's the person behind all the bravado. But don't worry, Ric Flair doesn't really know Ric Flair either. So they talk with his first wife. That's the mother of David and Megan. We talk with David and Megan about how their dad was never home, how there was money, but he was never there. He tried to put things in their life instead of he being in their life. He talked about how once he got on the road, once he became Ric Flair, the kiss stealing, wheeling dealing, woo, jet flying, limousine riding, that was the life that he wanted. It's the life that he needed. And a lot of that also goes back to the fact that when he was, if you don't know, he was adopted. He was effectively abandoned by his birth mother and adopted by very upper crust members of society who really couldn't control him because he was kind of a wild child. There are lots of Ric Flair naked. I've often joked, and ironically this seemed to come true, that every good Ric Flair story begins or ends with him naked. They talk about one of the flights when all he had on was his shoes, his socks, and the rope. And hearing Tony Schiavone describe it in a level of detail that makes you think, wow, that's a pretty specific recollection. And then showing Sting go, yeah, he was just there, he was naked. A lot. So they cover a lot of his becoming a wrestler, everything getting big, but then they always buffer it with the people who he left at home. And then they get to the point where they talk about the death of Reed. My daughter's gonna be 4 and she's in like one room away. I can't even fathom what it would be like to bury your kid. And I got a friend that he had to, and it was it's tough. I mean, it's probably the toughest thing you'll ever have to do. And when they get to that part, and they talk to him about it, and it ends up being, his son idolized him. It was like hero worship. He wanted to be his dad. He wanted to party like his dad. He wanted to wrestle like his dad, and he. Okay, so try to have everybody happy. Okay. So they talked about the WrestleMania match he had with Shawn Michaels, and then how it was the best send off ever. And then he wrestled in TNA because he had no money. Because even though Flair made a ton of money in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, his lifestyle required a ton of money. He likes to party because he didn't want to be alone. He had to be Ric Flair. He doesn't know how to be Ric Flair. They also talk about if you've read the book he did with Charlotte or Ashley, that he wasn't there for Megan and David, but he was there a lot for Reed and Ashley until he left them. And it's really sobering when they get to the point where they actually ask, you know, what do you remember it as? And he more or less says, you know, the things that he will not be remembered as, but that he'll be, you know, one of the greatest professional wrestlers of all time. And then when you look back at what Ric Flair sacrificed to be Ric Flair. Yeah, I've read it in the books, but when you hear him say it, and you see his family say it, it's something different. Because when you read a book, you're reading the words someone else wrote down. There's that buffer between. But then when they show, you know, his first wife, and she's describing it, and then she's like, you know, I can't badmouth him because of my kids, and it makes it all real. Like, it makes it incredibly real. But on the bright side, and on a higher note, Hulk Hogan does say that Hogan only wrestled 4 match types, and that Ric Flair is a far superior wrestler to himself. He's like, well, Flair wrestled hundreds of hour-long matches. I haven't wrestled one. You know, people say you're the greatest. He goes, no, it's the dude next to me. It's that guy. It's him. And they did bring up how they were going to do Flair Hogan at WrestleMania, but they didn't. Instead, having a Bash of the Beach. And as Triple H says, he's like, you know, it happened, 5-10 years out of their prime. And it's a very sobering look at this man's career. A man who's just now become sober. It's hard to say if I recommend watching it if you're a fan, because it puts so much perspective that you might not want to have, but I think you should have. He's a person that has so much idol worship, and then you find out exactly what it is that his family went through for the fans. It's a sobering look at the man behind the legend.